You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
To the Locked On Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra, Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun, Tate. The Locked On Hawks Postcast is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So they battled for a minute, but couldn't get the bump they needed. We'll discuss and we'll talk about why size really does matter. But first, let's talk takes on how the Hawks and Orlando Magic played highly contested games that had the regular season series tied, but had a play-in game tonight that was anything but competitive in a 120-95 loss. And Tate, you said the Hawks picked the wrong time, the wrong night to have that kind of game.
Yeah, they did, Tenitra. And listen, I mean, they this is a Hawks team that, you know, while I maybe wasn't the most of all confident people that they would win this game, I definitely wanted to give them a chance because I believe that Orlando was a team that was vulnerable of being able to let teams like Atlanta be able to stay within the game. I'm not sure that they are as developed mature-wise as a Hawks team is sometimes, just with the youthful guys that they rely on as key contributors and everything else that goes along with that. But you know, obviously they've got a different level of size, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But you know, when you start talking about shooting 19% from three, and I know that, you know, Orlando is one of those type of teams that does a very fine job at not just being present, but also closing out, playing gritty, bully ball type of ball, and you know, just really wanting to muck it up quite a bit and wanting to bring that physicality. I think the Atlanta Hawks kind of knew that. They were expecting that. I thought the Hawks needed to come out and punch first in this situation. In some ways that they did, but they kind of knew that they were outmatched in some ways. And so I think that they kind of played into that just a little bit and could have controlled that a little bit better within themselves. But that's just from three. 19% from three isn't going to win you a whole lot of basketball games at all, probably not even against the old timers up at the local YMCA. But even when you factor in, you know, cleaning the glass, you know, the Atlanta Hawks do a fairly good job at, you know, even though they don't always have the bodies, you know, cleaning the glass and what have you. And on the offensive end, they do a pretty good job as well. Defensive or offensive, total rebounds, none of that they were able to win against Orlando, which I thought was very telling for this game. And then the last piece is that the Atlanta Hawks is one of the best teams, I think top 5 or 6 in terms of getting up and down, pace, points in transition, things of that nature. I think they had like, for sure, single digits in that department tonight, maybe only about 4 or 5 points in transition. Orlando was getting back on defense pretty well. So you factor in all of those things, plus a Trae ejection, and I think that's a recipe for disaster for the Atlanta Hawks. And now you have no choice but to look forward to them on Friday against whomever that may be to compete for the 8th season on the brink.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think you make a great statement because you saw what happened in the third quarter with this Magic team, how it just looked like the Hawks put their foots on their necks and, hey, they were about to make a furious comeback. And then you saw just a little something of the Magic at the end of the third quarter that looked like the Magic from the first half. And that kind of indicated what that fourth quarter was going to look like, which is that gritty, grimy version of Orlando that you just mentioned that then went back to outscore the Hawks 41-22, where the Hawks had gotten off to a really nice, and it ended up being 26-18 in that third quarter, but the Hawks really, really outscored them, out-hustled them, outperformed them for the most part of the third quarter until the hustle quotient that you just talked about showed up for the Magic to get them to scrounge their way to 18 points. And then, of course, they got back to form in that fourth quarter, outscoring the Hawks 41-22. But yeah, a Trae Young ejection doesn't exactly help. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I think it was just one of those where the Magic looked like we thought they would look in the beginning of the game. And then the Hawks started to pick up a little bit. And then it looked like, oh, it'll be a competition because these are two teams that in the regular season played to a series tie. And other than the Sunday game, which really was kind of weird because there were moments where it was competitive with second units in there. But for the most part, those 4 games were competitive. So you kind of didn't expect to see what the final outcome was. But one of the reasons you can't be too shocked is because, as we always call it, RRPs are always lurking for this Atlanta Hawks team.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is a random role player. But this time, my take was that he might be a role player, but he ain't random. And that's Cole Anthony, because Cole Anthony always seems to have the Hawks number no matter what. And tonight was no different. I mean, he just absolutely kind of took over the game. Cole Anthony played 20 minutes, DeShaun.
Yeah.
Minutes, and yet scored 26 points on 10 of 17 shooting from the field, 4 of 9 from the 3-point line. Heck, this guy even went to the free throw line once and hit both shots. I mean, it was that kind of night for him. 6 assists and 3 rebounds, no turnovers. This
How about that?
is Cole Anthony typically has, but he almost doubled depending on whose stat line you look at, because ESPN and StatMuse are somewhere in the middle. So if you split the middle from what they say he averages against the Hawks, he doubled what he averages against the Hawks in points. Now, assist-wise, pretty consistent with about 4 assists per game. And rebound-wise, he typically hovers between about 3-4 rebounds a game. So that Cole Anthony showed up like he normally does against the Hawks. But the shooting Cole Anthony said, oh, okay, you guys want to give me 20 minutes to torch him? I got it. And this is what he does consistently. And it's like, again, we don't expect the Hawks to be able to shut down every role player, but the guy who has done this in just about every game that he's played against you, 15 games, and this is what he's averaging against you, Hawks, coupled to what he averages against the rest of the field, 9 points, 3 rebounds, and under 3 assists when it comes to the rest of the association. That's the problem I have, because who didn't scout for Cole Anthony?
I'll say this, Tenitra. Sometimes I feel like he's a combination. I'm trying to think, like, who would be the guy on this Hawks team that would remind me of what Cole Anthony is for the Orlando Magic. And while I'm not really sure that I can come up with one, in some instances, I feel like it's somebody like a Vit Krejci, where when he is hot and cannot miss, he's hot. And the more important thing from what I noticed from Cole Anthony ain't even just about getting hot and all of that, but it's about the energy that he brings and how it uplifts the teams. And it always comes in a way that is like a live wire / like it's like a wild range of emotions almost to a degree. You know what I mean? I mean, like when he's feeling it, and he's not one that you want to try to calm him down because he's getting a little bit too excited. Like, you just got to let him go and be who he is, so you can keep on putting the ball in the basket. And no, I mean, listen, for a guy like Cole Anthony who brings that kind of energy, and when he's shooting the ball well, he's shooting it well and makes plays even on the defensive end with his athleticism. And don't forget, this goes all the way back to when I kind of first met Trae and first laid eyes on Trae, getting a chance to watch him for the very first time. This is going back to, I think he was maybe 16 or 17 years old. He's in high school. He's on the AAU circuit. Who is he playing in the championship at the Peach Jam against none other than the PSA Cardinals, led by, who is a freshman at this time, Cole Anthony. And he torched Cole Anthony. But I can remember back to that very game, and I promise you I'm not over exaggerating. I can remember back to that very game, and Cole Anthony was the young dog. I mean, Trae is going into his senior year. Cole Anthony's a freshman, and it felt like he took that a little bit personal. But these are two players that are very familiar with one another and just kind of know how to guard to a degree as much as possible, or contain them as much as possible to one another. And it's no surprise that sometimes when I get a chance to see those guys kind of go at it, you can kind of see that there's a little bit of history there. So I don't know. I mean, the Atlanta Hawks definitely got their work cut out. I don't love being on the edge of the seat, kind of like, you know, being on the brink of the season and all that kind of stuff, but they put themselves in position to be able to be here. You didn't do enough work throughout the regular season. Nobody wants to hear about Jalen Johnson and injuries because everybody has those right now. You kind of got to play the hand of the cards in which you are dealt. And right now, those cards are saying Friday against whomever that may be.
Whomever that may be. And, you know, the Hawks attempted to turn a corner that would have kept them from not playing a game Friday, but that didn't happen. And we'll talk about what the turning point was in a moment. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Hungry Root. Spring is here and life is busier than ever between work, family, and everything in between. Well, it's time for grocery shopping and meal prep. That's why I use Hungry Root. It makes eating healthy, delicious meals simple and stress-free. It's like having your own personal shopper and nutritionist wrapped into one. Hungry Root takes care of grocery shopping and meal planning, offering personalized recommendations based on your tastes and health goals. In fact, Hungry Root tailors orders based on what you like or maybe what you didn't love so much. It gets smarter every single time. And with their high quality, nutritious food, you can stick to your gut friendly, high protein diet without spending hours planning. So take advantage of this exclusive deal. Get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/lockedonnba and use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA for 40% off and a lifetime free item. Meals come together in 15 minutes or less, giving you more time for workouts, family, and hobbies with Hungry Root.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So the Hawks were down by as many as 22 points tonight, cut the Magic's lead to 3 in the third quarter, but not turning the corner was really the turning point. And we kind of alluded to it earlier in that, yes, the Hawks went on a crazy tear in that third quarter, and you kind of saw some glimpses of that early on, right? Because you kind of saw Trae Young, I think it was that second quarter where he scored like 10 points, and you thought, okay, that's when you kind of saw the Hawks show some signs of life. And they came out on an absolute tear. I think they ended it with like a 21-9 run over like that first 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes of that third quarter. But then the Magic woke up. And it seems like all of the mistakes that the Hawks had in that first half that dug them the hole, the turnovers, the missed bunnies, the miscommunications, all of it came back to haunt them like a bad dream. And really, to me, that was the turning point. The turning point was the fact that you get it down to 3 and you can't turn a corner. There were multiple times there was a 3-pointer. There was the old-fashioned 3. There was even a 2-pointer that could have cut it down to 1. And Lord knows if you can cut it down to 1, you can probably take the lead. But none of those things happened because the Magic woke up, they reset, and then they were off to the races in the fourth quarter. And we know that that was pretty much game.
I think there's a couple different things here, Tenitra. I mean, the reality to me is the fact that I'm trying to see how I can really put this for real. Like this.
Say what you say.
No, I think that because I want it to make sense. It's making sense in my head, but it's not going to come out how I want it to. I don't think that the principles really changed between quarters. I think the Atlanta Hawks kept doing what they do, but I think it was predictable. Like, you know what type of team this is. You know that you can get up on a big lead on them, but you know that you have to be disciplined because they can make their run. But you know that at some point that gas is kind of going to run out earlier than not. And that's when you have your opportunity to be able to put the exclamation point on a game and then let them walk away from the game, getting on the plane, going back to Atlanta saying, well, we kept it close again, kind of thing. And I feel like it's easy to prepare. Correct.
Yeah.
It's easy to prepare for situations like that. I don't think it helped in the fact that I think Onyeka Okongwu picked up his third foul, which is really the only real, true, traditional big that you have. Picked up that third foul with 4 minutes remaining in the second quarter before the half. You were already down by 20 at that point. And speaking of, and this is just a point that I wanted to make because I don't think this was the whole turning point, but where it started at by them getting down by 22 to begin with is where you had Orlando go out on an 11-0 late first quarter run. This is what started it all to just begin with, right?
Yeah.
It's 6 minutes remaining in the first quarter. It's 15-14. The Hawks is up by 1. And then you turn around. Orlando goes on this 11-0 run. Now it's 2:41 left in the first, and now Orlando's up by 10, and they're not looking back. And once you go up by that many points, I think that while the Hawks knew, and Orlando, I really truly believe in my heart of hearts, know that Orlando knew that the Hawks were going to make a run. But I think that what they had to do, NBA. The most important thing was to be able to get that first lead up by as many as possible, because the Hawks are vulnerable to allowing a team to do that. And that's exactly what Orlando took advantage of. So that ended up turning into, obviously, Atlanta going 0 for 8 from the field during that run. And then it finished off the first quarter. Orlando did on an 18-4 run to end that. So I think that just put a little bit too much pressure on Atlanta, not to come back, but to realistically not exert too much energy to be able to come back, take the lead, and hold a lead against Orlando when everything is already going against you. Forget about whistles and all that, but you're just on somebody else's home floor who has real experience in the postseason just a year ago.
Yeah. I think all of those comments are valid, because that also could have led to the fact that the Magic were able to reset at the very tail end of the third quarter, because by that point you're so gassed from trying to battle back from being down 22, and your battle started in the second quarter. So you were literally fighting through it, probably got a little bit of a breather during halftime, but it felt like you were probably right back on the hamster wheel coming out in the third quarter. And you're going to run out of gas, especially against a team like the Magic that can be physical. Yeah. So, it makes
young legs.
Yeah, right. And not just young legs, but in addition to youth, chronologically, young legs also, because nobody had to play a whole lot of minutes. Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero played 34 and 33 minutes respectively. That's the most anybody played on that team, right? And you had Corey Joseph, who only played 18 minutes. So when you kind of look at their starters playing anywhere from 18 to 34 minutes, and you look at the fight that the Hawks starters had to play in, where Mo Gay played the least amount of minutes at 25.
Yeah,
that's what the majority of the starters played for the Magic. So you start talking about some tired legs at some point from doing that. And then even some of the things you had to do last week that the Magic didn't necessarily have to do to battle your way into staying in the 8th seed or in that 8th position. All of those things kind of end up catching up to you after a while.
They do.
Because there were many opportunities throughout the course of this game and throughout the course of the season that could very well have kept you from being in this position. Now, speaking of that, a position that we didn't expect anybody to be in was also one Trae Young didn't see coming, because he's only done it 2 other times in his career, and that's what we'll be talking about.
This is what you'll be talking about.
So Trae Young has only been ejected from games twice, once last year and once very early in his career. But tonight, Trae Young got ejected again. Just like you said earlier, DeShaun, just not the ideal time.
No.
Just wrong time for that kind of thing to happen.
No, it wasn't. And especially the way that he did it, which I thought was, I'll be honest with you, when I saw it, I'm like, number one, a little bit comical. But number two, it just appeared so very Trae Young under frustration, because he goes to the basket. Well, first, the ball is, I don't know if it's being inbounds or just coming off a rebound. He's on the outlet and getting picked up pretty much full court by Anthony Black, who's one of those young legs and kind of fearless players, and he's got size and all that kind of stuff. And not a terrible defender, but just he's got the crowd behind him, and he's confident and he's energetic. And Trae's already under a little frustration because they're trying to play, catch up ball a little bit. And so Trae Young finds a way to finally appear to have gotten past Anthony Black a little bit, but Anthony Black comes from behind him with the chase down block on a layup. And then, of course, just momentum from one guy to the next going into out of bounds. And it kind of looks like Anthony Black gives him a little bit of a bump falling into the cameraman now is Trae Young, and he's getting up off the floor and running down the court alongside Anthony Black and kind of feeling his own way. And there's some frustration with guys kind of, doing this whole thing with the arms and pushing each other's hands and arms down, and maybe had some friendly words. But because that wasn't called, and there's the frustration and crowd and everything else on the line, that we clearly know by this point exactly which direction that this game is going to go with the Hawks playing on Friday. I don't think that Trae was really pleased with some of the non-calls that the officials decided not to give. And with that, on a dead ball, Trae Young, someone rolls the ball towards the referee. Trae Young kind of kicks the ball somewhat out of bounds, picks it up. The official's just sitting there waiting for him to pass him the ball. Trae Young's dribbling it, faking him out, doing like this with the ball, and just doing a little bit too much extra, just theatrics, I guess is what I would call it.
Yeah.
And really not, wanting to give the ball up to the referee. I think at that point he knew he was going to be called now for the double technical, and he just went ahead and hit the showers before the refs told him to head that way. So I don't know what that means for this next game. Outside of him having to pay probably a pretty hefty penny, because that happened multiple times under one dead ball play. But I think that the mentality going forward needs to be, the frustration has to get under control a little bit more, because just because you're at home doesn't mean everything is going to go your way on a Friday night. And if you don't control that, we won't be having any more conversations about the Atlanta Hawks for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, so true. That's the kind of thing where somehow, some way, you got to take that out on the basketball court. You got a game that is still in hand somewhat, so you've got to find a way to channel that energy a different way. You don't have the good fortune to channel it any other way, and you most certainly are going to have to reset before Friday, because it's win or go home in the worst way. I mean, win or go home in the worst way. But tonight wasn't just about the miscues that the Hawks made. It wasn't just about maybe some questionable referee calls or non-calls. It was also about something that maybe was out of the Hawks' hands. We'll talk about that on the other side. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about it. When was the last time you had a service emergency? If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications, all through an app on your phone or computer. It's really cool, because you don't need to carry 2 phones like so many people still do. With Open Phone, you can manage business calls and texts from one app, whether you're at your desk or on the go. And a feature that you really might like, the shared inbox, where your team can jump into any conversation without missing a beat. And a lot of people love to use AI. So AI call transcripts and summaries save you time on follow-ups and ensures you never lose track of customer interaction. So Open Phone is offering customers, or listeners rather, 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you're switching from another service, Open Phone will even port your existing numbers over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Well, DeShaun, the old adage rang true against the Hawks tonight, and that is that size matters, whether it was length or girth or whatever you want to call it. It was a tough go for the Hawks. And granted, you could say, as I was noting earlier, that a lot of that size came with the front court. I mean, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr. had some nice nights. 17, 9, and 7. So almost a triple-double for Paolo, a double-double for Franz, and for Wendell Carter Jr., 19 and 7. Not a bad night for him either. But you made a good point as well. It didn't just sit in the backcourt. It was size that mattered everywhere that caused the Hawks a problem tonight.
It was. And that's my thing. Like, when you start factoring in on the front court, when you hear size, you just instantly start thinking about how much that the front court, correct, matters. But then when you start putting into, things into perspective, where you have a Contavious Caldwell Pope who maybe didn't have a great game by any stretch of the imagination, but he has the experience if nobody else has it on this team.
Yes.
And he comes with some size of his own as a big shooting guard. Then
Yeah.
you start talking about guys that you could just throw in there just because, to pick up some fouls, give another guy a breather, and just be a serviceable big to a degree with experience. By the way, that's someone like a Jonathan Isaac. You also have a Anthony Black, who we talked about. While he is young and he has the young legs and he's inexperienced, but he's athletic, but he's somebody that they could afford to put on somebody like a Trae Young, who won't necessarily back down. He's not going to have the experience that Trae has, and probably knows that he can't really defend Trae in the best of ways. But because he has the long arms and the tools and the wingspan and the potential and all these different things to be able to shuffle and move his feet and at least be able to keep up with Trae, with the way that Trae is so crafty and just the high IQ and how cerebral of a player he is, that makes it difficult for Trae when you have multiple guys, not just one, but multiple guys that can, really get out there and give Trae a really tough time. I think that's what we were talking about before, where it's going to be interesting to find out if Miami is the one that ends up winning this game. And I know that they don't have Jimmy Butler, but the kind of, not pedigree, but the blueprint that they had put out years ago, because they can throw multiple guys who are athletic and long wing defenders out there at Trae, can make it difficult. Last but not least, I don't want to forget to mention that same Anthony Black guy who did such a great job on Trae as a defender tonight, also ended up with 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, only missed 1 shot, and by the way, went 100%, 3 for 3 from the 3 ball tonight. So that guy is also another one who's only a second year in the league. So I think that just goes to show how many different options that they had to be able to take advantage of a team who's already lacking in size.
Yeah, I think you make valid points there. I think this team all the way around, just kind of their toughness. Because I remember we were talking, I don't know if it was the last game or maybe it was like a game ago, but we were texting about Orlando and saying, okay, Hawks, we see you kind of bullying the bully. So but we say that because, I mean, the Magic, that's just kind of how they play. And they have the ability, based on their size and kind of how they're made up, to be able to play a game like that. And also, obviously, it was a situation with Anthony Black where he was giving Trae some fits and he was doing his own thing as well. So, yeah, I think the NBA is always, regular season or not, postseason or not, the NBA is always about matchups, but particularly those things tighten up when it comes to the postseason. And so when I look at the Miami Heat, the Chicago Bulls, of course, those teams are going to do their playing game tomorrow night. And then that'll determine who takes on the Hawks come Friday. But when I look at it, I'm like, okay, in both instances, the Hawks walked away with a split. But I still feel like Chicago's a better matchup. I still feel like they have a better shot at beating Chicago because Jimmy Butler was never the biggest issue.
That's right.
Miami Heat.
That's right.
Most of the time, if we're being honest about it, most of the time it was like a Tyler Hero that was giving them grief. And who's with the Cleveland Cavaliers? Max
Kleber?
No. I'll
no. Max. Jesus Christ, the 3-point shooter.
Exactly. But that's all you need to say. You can stop right there. Because literally, that's what typically Max Strus. That's what typically gave them the issues. Max Strus was able to get off on the 3 ball, and then from there, the Heat were able to play an outside in game. Tyler Hero, same thing. So I feel like the players that gave them the trouble are obviously Strus isn't with them anymore, but Hero still gives them the blues. And there was always a random role player. It was never the same RRP from the Miami Heat that gave the Hawks the blues. I don't feel like there's ever any random role player from the Bulls that really does it to them. I feel like it's always somebody from their starting lineup.
I want to say this real quick, Tenitra, that while that is very true, and we know the kind of difficulty that they have with Miami, let's not forget where just a year ago, the Atlanta Hawks ended up losing in this exact same play-in situation. That was against the Chicago Bulls team, against guys that tend to give them some fits as well. Yeah. That being Ayo Dosunmu, that being your boy Kobe White. So like I don't. There's obviously not a perfect scenario for the Atlanta Hawks.
But come on now,
the imagination.
Yeah,
and it is certainly the Miami Heat for sure.
Yeah,
I just think it's going to be a really tough. Like this isn't about what either one of those other teams are going to bring, because we know that. I think it's going to come down to what Hawks team is going to end up showing up.
Yeah, because I mean, and again, Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu are not random role players either.
Oh yes, correct. No,
so that's what I'm saying. Like, they don't have a random role player, nor do they have the same guy who does it to them all the time. But the Hawks can't figure it out either way.
That's right.
But where they've had their best shot, or where I think they have their best opportunity matchup wise, might be the Chicago Bulls, because as much as, how do I say, as much as they have the identical records, if you will, this season against both those teams in the regular season, here's what the Chicago Bulls, and no offense, Billy Donovan, here's what the Chicago Bulls don't have: Eric Spoelstra. Yeah. Eric Spoelstra created the blueprint that the entire association has utilized on Trae Young. Has Trae figured it out a lot? Absolutely. If you look back at the first time, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, when we saw Miami employ this, yes, he has learned a lot about how to get out of the very crafty double teams that the Heat especially are able to put on him. But ultimately speaking, to me, I just still feel like the Heat have his number and the Heat have the Hawks number way too much. I think the biggest thing that needs to happen, other than for Quinn Snyder to help scheme around that, should they get the Heat, is that you better hope Chicago comes into town too, because darn if those Heat fans aren't insufferable. I mean, they just turned State Farm Arena into a darn arena that's unto their own. I mean, Chicago does it, but DeShaun, I'm telling you, having been the in-game analyst, I was telling somebody a couple nights ago, I never got harassed as much as I got harassed when the Heat were in town.
Really? Okay.
Harassment on 10.
Well, not only that, but
they buy up all the lower bowl.
Well, I feel like the Atlanta Hawks kind of owe them one anyway. And I think I sent you this. I was watching the game on my computer, and I think I sent you a recorded. They're down there in the fourth quarter or whatever it is, leaning and rocking. The same thing that Atlanta does when it's starting to enter the fourth quarter. And I was just swag and surf, and I'm like, wait a minute, I couldn't send it to you fast enough. I'm like, look at this, ain't that something? Like, they for real, like, swag and surfing, changing the coloration in the arena. I'm like, is this on purpose? Like, is this
Are you trolling?
No, it was a real troll moment.
Yeah, so like you said, little payback. You got an opportunity, Hawks. Got an opportunity for a little payback Friday night. Get it done. Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We will see you next time.